We are only a few days away from the NFL draft. And then after that, you get a little bit of a break. You get some OTAs, get a little bit of another break. Training camp is then there. Just preseason, week 1, NFL will be back in no time. But the Chicago Bears are picking number 10 in the draft, and I'm going to break down my top 10 players that I hope the Chicago Bears Chicago Bears could possibly target in this draft. Some of this is going to be wishful thinking. Some of this might be a little bit of a head scratcher, but I'm just trying to lay out 10 players that I think the Chicago Bears should at least try and target with that number 10 pick. In my opinion, if you hear someone's name not called out of this top 10 list, I think it's very fair to be very skeptical of what the Chicago Bears are doing at 10. Now, to be very fair, if they trade down, let's say they trade down to 16, 17, grab some more draft capital, maybe one of these players isn't going to be on the list. But nonetheless, here's my top 10 players. A couple things before we dive in really quick. Just consider this a primer for the NFL draft. If you've been working hard, if you haven't been paying attention, you got other things going on in your life, you go to the bar with some buddies, they start talking about the NFL draft, feel free to cherry pick some of these tidbits coming up here so that you can maybe use and carry into the NFL draft. And if they take one of these guys, maybe you have a leg up on what is possibly in store for a draft pick that, let's be honest, General Manager Ryan Poles needs to hit on. So a couple things out of the way. I want to get a couple of narratives out of the way. The first one that I got out of the way, they will not get a bite at all of these players. So keep in mind, especially guys in the top of this list here might be long gone before it even happens. But I'm putting them on this list, A, because I think that they're great players. And if the Chicago Bears were to trade up, there's only a few select guys on this list that I would trade up for. You're going to learn about them in just a second. Overall, this NFL draft, I'm not the only one saying it, I don't think is incredibly strong. As you dive a little bit deeper, and as you look at some of the grades coming in from a lot of scouts and a lot of different articles and places that I go to for my information, and we'll get into that grading scale in a second, you're starting to come away with the fact that there aren't a ton of top-end talent. I think that there's depth in this draft, especially at, say, the running back position, the defensive tackle position, the secondary. But in general, it's not the strongest draft in the world. Of course, there are going to be some blue-chip Pro Bowl players that are going to crawl out of nowhere, especially deeper into the draft. That happens every single year. It's hard to prognosticate or project that out. But in terms of the top half of this draft, it is pretty light. The Chicago Bears are getting a break, in my opinion, by the very specter of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders possibly going top 10. And I'll be honest, even if Jackson Dart slides in there, the Ole Miss quarterback in the top 10, it would greatly benefit the Chicago Bears because they need some of this talent to work its way back down to 10 because it gets a little thin at primary positions pretty quickly. There is depth on the offensive line, but is it a quality of player or prospect that is worthy to be drafted at 10? I don't see a ton of players there. I see a handful of players that the Chicago Bears should run to the podium at 39 and 41 and take, but just because of their value at that spot. But at the 10 spot, it is going to be a little difficult. Now, when we do this exercise and we go through the top 10, we're of course going to have to look at position and need, what the Chicago Bears obviously need on their roster right now. And where does that fit into the value aspect of where they're drafting or where they're picking in the draft? The one narrative I kind of want to get out of the way is that you can't take X player because the Chicago Bears are, quote unquote, so many moves away or have too many holes on their roster not to take said player. I'm going to give you a little inside information piece of advice here. If you hear that, even from the people and voices in this town that you like and respect and follow and admire a lot, in my opinion, it's kind of a cop-out line. You can't take this player because the Bears have so many more holes to fill on the rest of the roster. This is the biggest no blank type of statement that makes people seem a little bit smarter than they actually are. It's a bit of a straw man. This is not revelatory. The Chicago Bears won 5 games last year. The Chicago Bears lost double-digit games in a row. Of course, they have holes across their roster. And guess what? Across the NFL, every single team has holes on their roster. There are no perfect football teams. The Philadelphia Eagles that just won the Super Bowl do not have a perfect football team. They do not have holes or weaknesses on their team that they should try and fill out. Every football team has this problem. And with the salary cap and the way roster turns over and the way you have to manipulate your roster every single year, there is an aspect of plugging holes on a boat to try and keep some of the leaks out when you are trying to construct a roster. On a year in and year out basis, strengths become weaknesses and weaknesses become strengths. So don't buy into this. We can't take X or Y player this year simply because the Chicago Bears have too many holes on their roster. I promise you, even after this draft and after this season, which is hopefully a playoff one for the Chicago Bears, they will enter into the 2026 draft with holes on the roster. Every single season for the rest of your life. The idea in this exercise, specifically at picking number 10 in the NFL draft, is that the Chicago Bears have to get it right, and they have to get the best player available, and then get the most out of said player. Just take the most talented guy. We've done the work on the offensive line, and look, I'm going to say it all summer long. I still think the defensive line is going to be a real weakness for this team. But we're going to go through this list right now. I don't see a ton of game changers on the defensive line at 10. There's a couple of guys. They might not get to the Chicago Bears, but there isn't such a depth to it that you could just pick any of these guys and immediately get better. And of course, we're just focusing on that 10th pick for this week's episode. It's too hard to project out 39 and 41 and go through all the list of players and have you learn every single thing about every single player in that particular section. We're just going to focus on 10 for today. And let's be honest, general manager Ryan Poles at 10 needs to get this one right. Okay, so here we go. We're about to begin our list. Now, keep in mind, I'm pulling from a couple of different places. I'm pulling mostly from NFL.com. We're going to be reading some scouting reports from some different areas. We're also going to be revealing the grades that NFL analyst Lance Zierlein has at NFL.com on each player. Now, to keep in mind, the scale goes as such. Over 6 is an average to above average player. 6.4, 6.5 means that this person should probably be a starter within 2 years, a contributor, a solid piece on your football team with the possibility to maybe achieve a little bit more. Anything over 6.7 means year one starter, possible multiple Pro Bowler, and a prospect that really has a higher ceiling and maybe a higher floor than anyone under a 6.7. Anyone over 7.0, that analyst is projecting that player to be a perennial Pro Bowler, a possible superstar, and a guy that could possibly change your team in ways that go just beyond plugging and playing and finding a starter here and there. So, quick reference point. You're probably asking yourself, before we get into this draft, what are some current NFL players that have these particular grades? And I know the first one you're asking. What was Caleb Williams' grade coming out of college? Caleb Williams, according to NFL.com and Lance Zierlein, had a 6.74. It's pretty good. 6.74 is by far higher than what Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders currently have. 6.74, easy year one starter, possibly multiple Pro Bowler, could be franchise quarterback. For reference on another parts of some recent quarterbacks, I'm not going to go through every single one, but Joe Burrow had a 7.07. Trevor Lawrence had a 7.40. That was the highest I could find of at least the last 10 years. And Trevor Lawrence, to this point, hasn't quite fulfilled the promise of that 7.4, while Joe Burrow at 7.07, I think has met and maybe even exceeded that grading coming out of college. And for reference, someone even higher than that, Saquon Barkley at 7.45. And ask any Philadelphia Eagles fan, I think they think he's worth his weight in gold. All right, let's dive into it. Number one on my list, is Penn State defensive end Abdul Carter. I know what you're thinking. Chicago Bears do not have a shot at getting this guy. But if the Chicago Bears were to trade up for anyone in this draft, it would be Abdul Carter. The reason why he's number one on my list, and the reason why I'm even mentioning him, is to just reference, I think, the gap between his talent and some of the other talent that's going to be available at the defensive end position at around 10. Let's learn about Abdul Carter. 7.00 rating. Carter, urgency and athletic talent to bombard the stat sheet. This is the scouting report on him. He's always first out and first into contact after the snap, but can dart into gaps or around blocks as a penetrator. He's willing to scrap at the point of attack. Additional time in the weight room might be in order for him to move up in this class, but he rushes with a rabid all-game intensity that's hard for opponents to match. He explodes out of the blocks. He can bend and flatten at the top of the rush. He's good with his hands, but needs to keep working in that area to prevent long punches from knocking him off course. All being said, Carter's explosiveness, hunger, and body control should have him on track to become a highly productive 3-4 rush linebacker with Pro Bowl talent. He's been likened to Micah Parsons. His weaknesses are, again, he needs to get a little bit stronger. He has a little bit of average size. You see it on the field when he plays. And again, of course, a foot injury. They found a fracture in the offseason. Is that a long-term thing? Will that prevent him from contributing right away? In my personal opinion, covering the Big Ten last year, this guy is by far the best pass rusher in the draft. If the Chicago Bears were to pony up a handsome price to move up for anybody, I would probably move up for Abdul Carter. And if he slipped to 3 or 4, Chicago Bears would maybe have to think about it for just a little bit of a second. I think this dude is a game changer. When he played Ohio State last year, Ohio State won the national title. They had to double team him on almost every play. And I promise you, on the plays when they did not double team him, Abdul Carter got home to the quarterback. He is an automatic problem. He is an automatic guy that you have to game plan against. I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to get him, but he is number one on my list because if you were going to trade up for any person in the draft, in my opinion, for the Chicago Bears, it would have to be Abdul Carter. Number 2 on my list. Now, this guy is interesting. Every single year, one of these guys slips and falls, and nobody understands why. Think just a couple of years ago with Jalen Carter, that happened because of off-the-field issues. My number 2 prospect on this list is Travis Hunter. He's a 6.89 grading. That's pretty dang good. His strengths, let's read his profile. Exciting two-way player whose world-class athleticism and ball skills help him shine on both sides of the ball. Hunter is an instinctive, natural football player with a feel for making the biggest plays at the biggest times. He was the best player on his team by a long stretch. On offense, Hunter gets by on talent over technique, but will need to smooth out the journey from press release to catch with better route running. He has the burst to uncover over 3 levels and has that focus reminiscent of Devontae Smith in his Heisman Trophy winning season. As a wide receiver, he's pretty dang good. But also, guess what, guys? He plays cornerback. The cornerback tape was solid in 2023 and improved across the board in 2024. Hunter takes his skills and instincts from receiver and transfers them to cornerback. Whether they amplify his ball hawking talent and production will just be a matter of time. Hunter plays with excellent anticipation from man or zone, with burst and playmaking range that should terrify quarterbacks, and he possesses rare ball skills and leaping ability to make challenging interceptions, and he will contest a high number of passes. He's leggy and loses some ground when transitioning from his pedal, but he needs to improve upon that if he can handle the rigors of NFL run support. The weaknesses, and this is why I'm curious whether he falls in the draft. No one can tell you who he is. At the NFL level, a lot of people are highly skeptical that he'll be able to play both wide receiver and cornerback. That he'll be able to play 60 to 70 snaps every single week, year in and year out, and become the type of player that's going to be on your team in the long term. Could you burn this guy out right away? Some franchises think that he's going to be a cornerback. Other franchises think that he's going to be a wide receiver. Some franchises think that he'll be a cornerback mostly and then still be able to play 10 to 15 snaps at wide receiver. Weaknesses on the scouting report: he was rarely challenged by NFL caliber receiving talent in 2024, so that's a question mark from the cornerback side. He must prove he can compete against higher weight classes, and as a receiver has snaps where he gets mauled by press coverage, so he's a little light on his feet. He has average toughness after the run after the catch, and one personnel director said, quote, You don't play a guy full-time at receiver and then part-time at cornerback. There's a lot more there's a lot more value as a cornerback who plays 8 to 10 snaps a game at receiver. Another one says he's the best receiver in his class, and then there was a big drop-off. He's comparable to last year's big three of Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Rome Odunze, in my opinion. So where does this guy go? I understand that there's a high-end aspect of talent, but when soup to nuts, when brass tacks comes around, are some of these teams going to opt for maybe the defensive lineman or the offensive lineman? 2 quarterbacks are probably going to go in the top 5, top 6. Could a running back go in the top 6? Could some teams opt for cornerback Will Johnson out of Michigan? A guy who's played cornerback, who was the number 1 rated cornerback prospect heading into last year. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb, and I think of all the players that could possibly drop in this top 5, Travis Hunter could be one of those guys. Chicago Bears fans, nobody's talking about would Travis Hunter fit with the Chicago Bears, but I'm telling you, there's a possibility. We see it every single year that maybe just one of these guys, because a franchise doesn't know exactly what they are going to do with him and what they want out of him. Is there a world where Travis Hunter could fall to 8, 9, and 10 for the Chicago Bears? Now, here's my opinion. Let's play this out. If Travis Hunter were to fall to number 10 to the Chicago Bears, I would trade down. I would trade out of the pick. I would. Because what happens is, and this is a bit of the Jalen Carter situation too. Everyone's asking themselves, scratching their head, why is he still on the board? Why is he still on the board? Wait a second. One of those teams in the teens says, wait, we have an opportunity to go out and get this guy, and it won't cost us as much as it would if he was a top 3 pick. I think you put it up for sale. You see what you could get. And if you're the Chicago Bears, more draft capital, great. You move back a couple of spots. You're still targeting the same position areas if Travis Hunter was still on the board there at 10. But he's the number 2 player on my list, and the reason why I'm listing him on the Chicago Bears, and you won't see really anybody else putting him on there, is, in my personal opinion, I think that there is a small chance that he could slip in the draft. And if he slips in the draft, all it takes is for a couple teams to pass on him, and then more teams keep passing because all of a sudden their draft board is messed up. The guy that they wanted originally, that they always thought was going to be on the board, is still on the board. Let's just take him. Let's not mess with Travis Hunter, and maybe he comes back to the pack. Number 3 on my list here, we're doing my top 10 draft prospects that the Chicago Bears should, could, and I think will target at number 10 here on Sports Talk Chicago. I'm Joey Christopoulos. You're listening to WLS AM 890. Number 3 on my list is Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. For those of you that do follow a lot of different Bears outlets, this guy's name's been brought up a ton. If you haven't heard a ton about him yet, don't worry. He is a prototypical Chicago Bears player. He is a run stuffer. He is that defensive tackle, that anchor in the middle of a defense that honestly the Chicago Bears never got right in the Matt Eberflus era. Even though when they hired Matt Eberflus, that was supposed to be the one piece that he really needed to make his defense work. That 3 technique. Now they have Grady Jarrett, and now they have a guy like Mason Graham that can come in. Now, Mason Graham is graded at a 6.48, and there are a lot of teams that love the talent of Mason Graham. The chances, again, of him being on the board at 10 are slim, but there are possibilities where if he slides to 6, 7, or 8, the Chicago Bears might get tempted, might move up just a little bit, and might take their guy. This is one defensive player, him and Abdul Carter, that the Chicago Bears, if they could get their hands on them somehow, I would be incredibly excited. And my healthy skepticism about the Bears defense, and more specifically the defensive line next year, it might start to tilt and might start to change just a little bit. Let's learn about Mason Graham. Strengths. 3 technique who provides activity, effort, strength, and quickness. Graham's first step quickness makes interior disruption inevitable. He is the instant read and response to regularly beat lateral blocks. He's stout at the point of attack with great leverage and body control, but will lose some ground against double teams. Who wouldn't? I'm just throwing that in there. Graham's lack of length makes it tougher for him to find quick wins as a rusher, but he more than makes up for it with his activity level and foot quickness. Harmonious hands and feet are the catalyst for his edge-to-edge counters, while his extended effort and closing burst help him get home. He may not dominate as a pro, but at his strength, his body control and quickness, it should allow him to play his brand of ball and become a good starter in an upfield defensive front. He's got a very high floor, people. Get into some weakness. Some of it is measurable stuff. They don't like the length. They think he's got a burly frame and stubby arms. Shots fired. Not enough bull rush to collapse guards into the pocket. His trouble dropping a deep anchor against double teams. Look, a lot of these weaknesses on the board, if you pair him with a guy like, let's just say, Grady Jarrett, who's currently on the Chicago Bears, or even maybe a player like Andrew Billings teaching Mason Graham a thing or two, I think it could be an immediate upgrade. At the very least, if we're going to struggle rushing the passer, let's at least stop the run. Mason Graham, I think, could help do both of those things. He's the number 3 prospect on the board. I'm not 100% sure. I think he will be gone by the time the Bears get an opportunity to draft at 10. But if he is around, just remember, I had him at number 3 on the list. Picking him at number 10, I think, would be a home run slam dunk. And I think there would be a lot of people that very next day that follow the Bears and talk about the Bears that will thumbs that one up 100%. Let's get one more in here before we take a break. You're listening to Sports Talk Chicago with Joey Christopoulos right here on WLS, AM 890. Happy Saturday, Chicago. Number 4 on my list, Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU. Graded out at a 6.44, so just above, should be a starter within 2 years. Solid contributor, possibly a Pro Bowl. Let's get into his strengths. Athletic left tackle prospect who's durable and battle-tested but has elements of high risk, high reward in his game. Campbell is a thumping run blocker who can clear out B-gaps with forceful down blocks and displace base blocks with his strike and run technique. But he struggles to win laterally. He will lunge and miss at stunts with movement. Campbell operates with good athleticism and agility and pass protection, but is way too leaky about inside moves. He has a jarring heavy punch and can latch in to control the rep. However, he has, and we've talked about this before about Will Campbell, short arms. And when he's been beaten to first action, the footwork and technique go out the window, forcing him to scramble and survive to save the pocket. His play is determined, spirited, and aggressive, which works in his favor, but Campbell must learn to vary his pass set techniques and operate with optimal hand timing in order to thrive at tackle instead of being moved to guard. Weaknesses: arm length, arm length, arm length. Inside pressure, his punch timing can be too mechanical and can be a bit premeditated. His speed to power can bounce him into the pocket. Arm length, little inconsistent footwork. Did I mention arm length? And oh yeah, the final one, is he a guard long term? So let's get to some more positives that I like about Will Campbell. The first one is that from the time that he became a freshman in the SEC, on some very powerful offenses that, by the way, had Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Will Campbell has been a starter at left tackle from the jump, from day one. Huge leader. If you ever hear this guy talk at a podium during an interview, you will love it. He talks like a completely normal person. He doesn't have that robotic, monotone, athlete type of response. He's introspective. He's thoughtful. I think he's got a nice little sense of humor to him. I think he'd fit great here in the city of Chicago. But again, what do you make of that arm length? Now, let's be very clear about this. When we talk about him having short arms, and I've done this before on the show, when I talked about what I like and what I don't like about the combine, there are certain positions, and specifically when we talk about left tackle and we talk about right tackle, where the arm length is a huge, huge deal. It just is. If you go across the NFL, there are only 2 or 3 guys that have arm length comparable to Will Campbell's. 29 other starting left tackles in the NFL have longer length. And what it is you want to have the ability to keep the opponent, those crazy defensive ends in this league, with those crazy measurables and those long lengths, you got to keep them at bay just long enough. And you can't let them get into your chest, and you can't let them bully you around. And some of those weaknesses illustrate some of Will Campbell's problems with that arm length, and probably going up against guys that are a little bit more athletic, a little bit longer. And he could use all of his aggressiveness all he wants to, and he can use his techniques, but maybe he needs some more tricks in the bag. So Here's what I will say. I've been pounding the table for forever with the Chicago Bears about how they need more offensive line help, something that I wholeheartedly agree with. If you would say to yourself at pick 10, do you believe that there's enough value where you take a guy like Will Campbell, a guy that probably eventually within 1 or 2 years will probably be your right guard as you move on from Jonah Jackson, or see what happens with Joe Thuney? Would you be okay with that as a Bears fan? I don't think, in my opinion, drafting Will Campbell at 10 means you've got your left tackle of the future. If anything, it just reinvigorates my scenario where I could see possibly Joe Thuney kicking out to left tackle. Not ideal, but having Will Campbell play guard. Now, at guard position, Will Campbell, this guy sounds like a tailor-made prospect. This sounds like a great thing. This guy sounds like he could be a Pro Bowler at the guard position. But if you're drafting him as a left tackle, you have to have some realistic expectations. He's number 4 on my list, and he is definitely a guy that, again, could be on the board, could not be on the board for the Chicago Bears at 10. But from what I've seen so far, I think that he is the best offensive line prospect in this draft. And when I say offensive line, notice I did not say offensive tackle specifically. I think the offensive tackle position, especially the left tackle in this draft, you got to do some real digging, and then you got to roll the dice a little bit on a couple of these guys. Armand Menbu being one of them as a possibility, not on my list here. But again, a guy like J.C. Lathan, a guy taken last year, has he really worked out yet? It's tough to say. He's got measurables and traits, but hasn't put the play together. So when we're talking about Will Campbell, if you're okay with him maybe moving into guard at some point in his career, and he'll be a damn good guard, feel good about this. And also, on its face, we can talk all we want about what Will Campbell can't do. But what Will Campbell can do is immediately make a Bears offensive line a little bit better than it was the day before. And at the end of the day, an abundance of wealth at that position is not a bad thing for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears moving forward. I'm doing my Chicago Bears top 10 draft prospects. I want to see the Chicago Bears possibly target and draft at 10 in the NFL draft coming up this week on Thursday night. I've hit my first 4 through the list. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, and Will Campbell are my top 4. So let's get to my 5th draft prospect. And this one is the most polarizing in the bunch. And at the top of this episode, I talked a lot about narratives, and you can't take this guy because the Bears have simply too many holes to fill, too many needs on this roster. In my opinion, every NFL team has holes. Every NFL team has needs. The Chicago Bears won 5 games last year. They lost 10 games, multiple double-digit games in a row. It doesn't matter. There's plenty of holes to cover, so why don't you just get the best player, the most talented guy, which brings me to number 5, Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. Let's talk about it. Let's do it. So first off, on the grading scale, 7.15. For those of you missing at the beginning, anything over 7 in an NFL draft analyst's eyes, especially this one off of NFL.com, this rating is 7.15, means perennial Pro Bowler. His NFL comp is LaDainian Tomlinson. He is the same height and weight and build as Emmitt Smith, but probably more jacked. Let's get to the scouting report strengths on Ashton Jeanty, and then let's walk this through. Jeanty plays a position that has become devalued on draft day, but his unique talent and the resurgence of the run game in the NFL should force teams to reconsider that factor when weighing his value. He's the ultimate yardage creator with the talent and skill set to succeed independent of the quality of his blocking. Jeanty's speed forces linebackers to flow hard outside, creating cutback lanes and chunk runs, while his vision, balance, and elusiveness get it done along the interior. The threat of what he can do on the ground should create ideal play-action opportunities for his team, allowing his next play caller to say, hey, unburden a young quarterback or any other passer being asked to shoulder too much on the offense and just give the ball to Ashton Jeanty. Does any of this sound familiar, or any of this sound Chicago Bears-like so far? Continuing on, he's compact and muscular, but there could be some minor concerns surrounding his massive workload in 2024. The top-flight running back is capable of becoming the face of an offense in a league where the pendulum might be swinging back to the running game. Genty has future all-pro talent. Sound pretty good to you? Let's just read off his weaknesses real quick, and let's try and break this down. His weaknesses, draft value is at 10. Where the Chicago Bears are, 2024 workload bordered on the absurd with 374 carries, including 279 over the final 9 games. A lot of tread off the tire in that situation. Tight hips limit his ability to make sharp downhill cuts. Don't really care about that. It's something you can improve on. Might need to gear down a hair to allow blocks to develop. Okay, that's another teaching technique. Eric Bieniemy, running backs coach, one of the finest running backs coaches in the NFL, should be able to help out with that. The one that kind of scared me a little bit, and I saw this one too as well. Fumble prone once defenders start badgering the football. He's got to get better at that. And then the other one, of course, is playing at Boise State. You just ask yourself, what did the actual competition look like on a week-to-week basis for Ashton Genty, even though he was racking up 200-plus yards almost on a weekly basis? So I'm a little conflicted on this one, but I will say this. I'm not going to get on the microphone here after the draft next week and rail against the Chicago Bears if they decide to take Ashton Genty at 10. There is a lot of rumors right now that Las Vegas Raiders at number 6 are going to take Genty. He might not even be on the board. The only reason that I am hesitant, I'm not knocking Ashton Genty as a player, but there was a report last week that 31 running backs in this draft got a draftable grade from a bevy of different scouts. So 31 running backs with top round 5 talent in this draft. I mean, that's the Oprah Winfrey of running backs. You get a running back, you get a running back, you get a running back. That's a lot of talent there. That's a lot of depth. So to say and to be so sure that out of that talent pool of 31 running backs, to take Ashton Genty at 10, you're almost saying to yourself, I am so confident that Ashton Genty will be the best of the bunch that I'm willing to take him perhaps 15, 16, 17, maybe even 20 spots ahead of the next running back in this NFL draft. It is a little bit of a gamble. And we could talk all we want, and there's a lot of people that think that the smartest way, and they think that they're smart for saying it, is that you can get a running back on the cheap. You can find a running back, it's a dime a dozen, and it isn't as prioritized as it once was, 15, 20 years ago. Those are some valid points, but again, there are certain running backs that are simply a cut above. Christian McCaffrey completely transformed the San Francisco 49ers offense. Saquon Barkley came into Philadelphia with that offensive line, went in and won the Super Bowl. And then there are other guys taken in the first round. My wife's in the room next to me, so she's going to get upset, but Najee Harris with the Pittsburgh Steelers taken in the first round. Solid running back, not a bad player, but taken in the first round and didn't become a game changer or the focal point of their offense the way that they hoped. Which begs the question, did they get the most value out of making that selection when they did? And that's the big question with Genty. The other one a little bit is money. Taking a guy at 10, you have to realize automatically will put him, I believe, in the top 9 or 10 of highest paid running backs in the league as a rookie. So you don't get that rookie contract of, well, we have this great player and we don't have to pay him a ton of money. We can allocate dollars somewhere else. Are you better off using that value on, yes, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a cornerback, when you might get more out of that position, and also would also save you from going out and having to spend buku bucks at those positions in free agency when you might not do that in the running backs market because you just want to draft these guys. I've been on here many times on the show, and I'm going to say it again just for funsies, that I think talent and value-wise, I think Trevion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State, is the best value, and I think he has the highest upside. And I'm going to go out and say that I think he might be 3 years from now the best running back from this class. amongst them all. I think Ashton Genty is going to be a really good player. He reminds me more of Alvin Kamara than he does LaDainian Tomlinson. But still, Alvin Kamara is a great player. If Ben Johnson takes Ashton Genty, I am not going to wag my finger at it. I think the Chicago Bears need good players. Shocker, I know. But look, a 7.15 rating, a guy that has a high probability of making a Pro Bowl, a guy that immediately solves your running back position, a position that, let's be honest, has been a bit in flux. Even when David Montgomery was in a Bears uniform, he still would get hurt once a year with an MCL injury of some kind, miss 3 or 4 weeks, and be scrambling. The idea with Ashton Genty is all of a sudden now you have a powerful back that I will go back to the scouting report. Allows his next play caller to unburden a young quarterback or any other passer being asked to shoulder too much of the offense. Does that sound familiar, Bears fans? Is that not what the Bears were asking of Caleb Williams last year? And if you want to believe in Caleb Williams, getting him the type of help of Ashton Genty would not be the worst thing in the world. I'm not going to cry tears if they don't take him, if they pass on him, or if he isn't even available on the board. But if they do take him, I'm not going to freak out. And for those Bears fans that just love offense and points and wide receivers and quarterbacks, Ashton Genty, get excited for this guy. Because not only is he fast and not only is he quick, he is tough. The dude is a tank. So if you've got your thunder and lightning or whatever you want to call it, and lightning is DeAndre Swift, Ashton Genty brings the thunder. Let's move on to number 6 here. I'm doing my 10 prospects that I want the Chicago Bears to target with their 10th pick in the NFL draft. Right here in Sports Talk Chicago with Joey Christopoulos, right here in WLS AM 890. Let's get to Will Johnson, the cornerback of Michigan. I got him probably higher up the list than others. But again, Will Johnson, 6.50 rating, probably would be a little bit higher. This was a guy who heading into last year, a lot of people thought was going to be a top 2, top 3 pick in the NFL draft. Let's get to the scouting report. Teams love big, fluid cornerbacks with ball production, and that is exactly what Johnson offers. He's instinctive and plays with good body control and change of direction in space. He can play man coverage, but he's at his best when playing with his eyes forward instead of chasing routes downfield. Johnson displays good pre-snap recognition and can read and anticipate routes thrown at a high level. While he plays the role of thief in coverage, he needs to balance that mentality with a healthy respect for NFL route runners, as he may lack the recovery speed to close the distance at a desired rate. He has the coveted traits and areas and concern He has coveted traits, and his areas of concern fail to stand out as impediments for what could become a long, successful career as a future Pro Bowler. His weaknesses, too aggressive missed tackles, and he battled some injuries last year playing for Michigan. Now, you could kind of slice that a couple of different ways, especially last year. Michigan's offense was so terrible that the defense had to have that old school Rex Grossman Bears defense mentality of we can't give up any points and we have to create turnovers. So Will Johnson, obviously trying to take that next step in his NFL career, playing on a team with no offense, maybe gambled a couple of times against a certain type of competition, and maybe that shows up on tape a little bit. I think that's something that you can easily coach out of the player. The first thing you don't want is you don't want to coach into a player aggressiveness. You want to, at the very least, coach it out of him. I got him number 6 on the board because, look, if he's available at 10, and we're talking best player available, we just gave Kyler Gordon a 3-year deal of $31 million guaranteed. We got Jalen Johnson locked up. I understand that you've allocated a lot of your dollars and time into that secondary, but I'm not buying Tyreek Stevenson. And if you're telling me you can go out and get the best cornerback on the board, I think he's a better cornerback than Travis Hunter. The reason why Travis Hunter is rated higher is because he won a Heisman Trophy also playing receiver. Will Johnson is a better quarterback. If you can get the best cornerback on the board, it really opens up a lot of different things for your draft strategy moving forward and for your roster construction. You're not trying to plug and play a dude who has a 3rd or 4th round pick, going to take his lumps early, maybe rebound, The learning curve is steep for NFL cornerbacks, and you want to try and mitigate that the best you can. Will Johnson at 10. It would be an out there pick, but I think Chicago Bears fans would love him. And then all of a sudden, Jalen Johnson, Will Johnson, and Kyler Gordon, those are your cornerbacks moving forward. It's not a bad place to be. Let's move on. Number 7, Kelvin Banks Jr. He's a tackle out of Texas. His grade is 6.43. Again, very similar to Will Campbell's, a little bit higher. And let's get into his scouting report. The 3-year starter who has gone to battle in the trenches with current and future pros. Banks will come into the league as an early starter, but his run blocking is more pro-ready than his pass protection. He's technically sound and scrappy in the ground game with quickness and athleticism to get all the move blocks. He has the leverage and strain to hold his own at the point. He has a slide quickness to deal with speed, but he must become more proactive in attacking power rushers and long-limbed attackers to prevent them from dictating the terms. He needs to improve his anchor and hand placement, but he should become a long-time NFL starter at either tackle or guard. Weaknesses: again, polarizing guy. A lot of people think that he's better as a guard, as a tackle. Some evaluators think that he has sloppy hands and too lean for pass protection, would have to get stronger. Again, are you getting a trend here with taking an offensive lineman at 10? Some of these guys with the highest grades on the board, they don't know if they're tackles or if they're guards. I'm starting to believe, and I'm happy the Chicago Bears did this by getting Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, and Jonah Jackson. They covered their bases a little bit in terms of what they want to do at 10 at the NFL draft. I don't know if offensive lineman is exactly the move anymore, and it might be a bit of a risk or a bit of a reach going for a guy like Kelvin Banks at 10. Will Campbell, maybe a little bit better player, but do you see some of the question marks there? At 39 and 41, you can rationalize it. You can try and find some more value. And this is a guy at 39 and 41 that doesn't need to start right away, but hopefully is a piece moving forward. At 10, this guy better be ready to go, and Ryan Poles needs to hit on this pick. So Kelvin Banks, I got him coming in at 7, only because I prioritize protecting Caleb Williams more than anything. He did play at Texas. They did have a good offense. He did play well in the college football playoff. I think the dude has some talent. But again, it isn't quite the slam dunk that you're hoping for when you're drafting at 10. Number 8 on the list, finally a defensive lineman. Again, at 10, this is why, as much as anyone would want more pass rush for the Chicago Bears defense, I just don't know if the value is there at 10 for it to make sense for the Chicago Bears. They still might do it, but these next couple of guys, there's some question marks. And why you're starting to realize that maybe the blue chip talent in this draft, there isn't a abundance of that. There's more depth of solid, good players, but are these guys, do they have the possibility to become great players? Number 8 on the list, Mike Green. I'm just going to say it, boring name. I'm sorry. Mike Green doesn't really just ring a bell of really getting me going, but I digress. 6.46 rating, pretty solid, should be a starter. Scouting report, high energy pass rusher with productivity and a method of play that should translate to the next level. Green displays a natural and instinctive rush, utilizing loose hips and a series of moves and counters that can open doors with force or finesse. He's very physical. Notes of violence in the way he attacks blockers in both phases. His explosiveness allows him to penetrate gaps, play around or through the protection edges, and change direction quickly to finish in the backfield. He relentlessly presses forward, but can run out of gas due to his hot running motor. Teams might wish he were heavier and longer, but he's willful, skilled, and powerful with the ability to create enormous matchup concerns as an edge rusher on the next level. Weaknesses. Again, plays so hard, occasionally runs out of gas. Can they actually... Somebody's got to coach that out of him. The other one, too, is that there have been some reports that I'm not going to get into the details of, and I'm going to be really careful with here because this could be total BS or could be something. There's been a couple red flag character type stuff with Mike Green in terms of how he is in a locker room. I'm going to kind of leave it at there because there's nothing really substantiated about it. And I don't want it to affect the kid. But this is a guy who really turned some heads at the combine. When we talk about length and then we talk about burst and quickness and what people got a chance to see when they really just locked their eyes on him, Mike Green blew everyone away and apparently dominated a lot of the offensive line competition at the combine. So this is a little bit of what you're asking yourself. Again, the dude needs to maybe get a little bit heavier. Does he have the ideal length? Is he the right option for the Chicago Bears at 8? I think this is a dude that maybe Chicago Bears fans need to start wrapping their heads around a little bit. And him and number 9, Michael Williams. These are two pass rushers that aren't perfect prospects. And in fact, some scouts like them a little bit more than others. But if you're going to get into the game of Chicago Bears trying to project something out and they get their pick of one of these guys, I'm going to put Shamar Stewart also in this list too as well. Maybe a guy like Jalen Walker. There's 3 or 4 guys. It's mix and match. It's a little bit of your flavor of ice cream going on with some of these pass rushers. No one is a slam dunk other than Abdul Carter, who I had number 1 at my list. But he's a guy that, again, and if you look up his numbers, the production isn't exactly there. And this is at the college level. So, again, you're really leaning on Dallas Allen to really kind of bring something out of a guy at a position, and you're going to be allowing and affording a lot of reps between him and Dio and Dingbu on the other side of Montez Sweat to get it done. And it continues to provide me with a little bit of skepticism. Let's hit Michael Williams really quick. 6.47, pretty much the same grade. Scouting report: explodes out of his stance and into blocks with force, rage, and quickness to spill and chase or close down the backside. He covers ground quickly with his backside pursuit, and more than 30% of his career tackles resulted in a loss. Like that number. Quality get off to attack the high side of the rush, uses tethered step and swipe move to infiltrate the pocket, keeps long arms and active for strip sacks and batted passes. He's got that length that people like. His weakness is inconsistent press and shed at point of attack. Pass rush approach is currently underdeveloped, as in he only has 1 or 2 moves. So at 10, from the pass rush position, this is why I have Will Johnson just a little bit ahead of these guys, is it just seems like some of these defensive ends, some of these pass rushers are unfinished products. I'm not saying that they can't be coached into great players. I'm not saying Dennis Allen can't do it. But at number 10, General Manager Ryan Poles needs to slam dunk this thing. And I'm starting to ask myself the question, maybe the Chicago Bears, if they do really want that pass rusher, I hope they trade down. They trade down to that 13 through 17 area, and then you can take one of these guys with extra draft capital and feel pretty good about yourself that you're getting some good value, some high upside, and a little something extra while you're walking out the door. But taking them at 10, it just worries me a little bit. My final one, number 10, I got to put him on here. I watched him all this year. It's Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. You've heard about him enough. You probably watched him last year. This guy grades out as 6.77. So for those scoring at home, technically graded out a little bit higher than what Caleb Williams got coming out of college. His scouting report, it's pretty fun to read. He's the ultimate whatever, whenever player in the 2025 draft with the size, athleticism, and competitive spirit to make good on his intentions. Warren plays with swagger and best player on the field energy. He imprints on games with alignment versatility, allowing opportunities to play callers to stress the defense. Despite his size, quick enough to beat man coverage underneath and plays with good recognition of holes in coverage. He has the ball skills and toughness to win contested catches and withstand punishing contact. He's very capable as a lead move blocker, but will need a little improvement at sustaining blocks when blocking in line. Tyler Warren can access all 3 levels of the field, but is best served short and intermediate. He possesses elite football character, plays with confidence that can be contagious. He has a chance to become one of the best tight ends in the league. His player comp is Jeremy Shockey. Weaknesses. We'll see limited separation as a vertical target. Room for improvement with hand placement as a base blocker. Hands get wide and grabby up to 7. So it's a lot of it's blocking stuff. Okay. At number 10, taking a tight end. It's definitely the best player available type of mentality. I can promise you that if we want to believe everything that we want to believe about Ben Johnson, also based on what we saw last year with the Detroit Lions, you best believe Ben Johnson can figure out a way to scheme up Tyler Warren in some interesting ways. This is a guy, just really quickly, he threw a touchdown pass last year. He ran for one. He caught one. He took direct snaps in the red zone and literally shot himself like out of a cannon Like, forget the tush push. This dude takes the ball under center or takes it at shotgun and catapults his entire body, and he's unstoppable. This guy also snapped the ball at one point to a backup quarterback, who the backup quarterback then passed it laterally to the starting quarterback, Drew Aller, on Penn State, who then threw a touchdown pass to Tyler Warren, who snapped the ball. I have heard some blowback that because of the offensive coordinator of Penn State, Andy Koltnicki's offense, that was so gadget-heavy and so tricky, that does that benefit or does that hurt Tyler Warren's stock value moving forward? I'm just going to say, and I'm putting him on the list at 10, Tyler Warren is a really, really good player. It doesn't mean that we automatically have to get rid of Cole Kmet. I think it means it just adds another element to the passing game. I think it allows the Chicago Bears to play a little bit heavy on the line of scrimmage, where you can have Cole and Tyler Warren on the field at the same time. Not upset with that. More protection for Caleb Williams. I do believe if you took Tyler Warren at 10 in the second round of drafts at 39 and 41, you're definitely taking your running back. So I think it's a bit of a tandem. It's a little bit of a combo there between the two of them. So look, I want to see what happens. I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to take Tyler Warren at 10. I do think it will be a reach. I don't think it is the best value. But I will tell you, I watched a lot of Tyler Warren last year, and he is a really good football player. And he has an opportunity to be what Sam Laporta is to the Detroit Lions offense. He has the opportunity to be that kind of player. And he also has the opportunity to come down with some 50-50 balls. I think you could use him in a lot of different ways. And I think you could also use him with a lot of different pre-snap motion, something the Chicago Bears didn't do a ton of last year, to kind of manipulate the defense, just to give Caleb Williams more opportunities to throw the football to more open receivers. Taking him at 10 would be an overdraft. But that's when we get into the game of in Ben Johnson we trust. I had to put him there at 10 because I really do think he is a quality player. And after all that we've talked about with these offensive linemen and defensive linemen, Tyler Warren feels like a more safe prospect than any of those other guys there. It just depends on what you value at the position, which position, and when you're drafting him. And for me, the reason why I put him at 10 is I just want the Chicago Bears to get the best players in this draft, especially at 10, and worry about value later. So to wrap up my top 10 prospects that I hope the Chicago Bears target or could target or would target, Abdul Carter, not high hopes, but had to put him on there. Number 2, Travis Hunter. Number 3, Mason Graham. Number 4, Will Campbell. Number 5, Ashton Genty. Number 6, Will Johnson. Number 7, Kelvin Banks Jr. 8, Mike Green. 9, Michael Williams. 10, Tyler Warren. That's going to do it here for Sports Talk Chicago with Joey Christopoulos. You're listening to WLS AM 890. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the listen. Happy Saturday. Hope to hear from you next week. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend.